Servus, hello, and bonjour. Matthias Eichler here with a very special edition of Single Track. Before I tell you about my next guest, I want to remind you one more time that August 5th is Beast of Big Creek, the only certified sky race course in the United States. If you want to run the beautiful trails of Mount Eleanor on the Olympic Peninsula, this is your chance. Beastofbigcreek.com has all the details, but hurry. Registration closes already on August 2nd and we're getting low on spots. And yes, that's beastofbigcreek.com. I bought the domain. Felt like getting the skyrunning certification justified owning the domain for this amazing event. Alright, here's how this week's episode came to be. After reading a press release from the Ironman group a few weeks ago, I decided that for the questions I've been having around the ownership of the events in the UTMB World Series, I should probably try to get some answers. And rather than just throwing these questions against the wall over and over again, I emailed the UTMB press office directly. I went straight to the people who should know, right? Well, I'm not a journalist. I don't represent a big national media empire, although Single Track is the OG global trail running podcast. Well, anyway, I had no idea what would come of it. Well, Sabina Millard-Rogerson from the UTMB World Series International Press Office responded and offered me a chat with Frédéric Lénart. Who's that, you ask? Well, he's the CEO of the UTMB group. What? Well, I was floored and nervous as crap and really excited and really wanted to do a good job with that conversation. So, I scheduled the meeting all professionally, not knowing what would come of it, and well, last Friday I chatted with no other than Frédéric Lénart. Mind blown. So what you're about to hear is my conversation with Frédéric, where I got to ask the questions that were on my mind regarding the UTMB Ironman World Series expansion across the globe and especially here in the US. If you're the first time here on Single Track, welcome. I'm originally from the south of Germany, but I have been living in Washington State now for over 20 years. Love the mountains, run trails, organize a couple trail races here in the Olympia area, and I'm the executive producer of the Trail Running Film Festival. What I've been doing with this podcast for over 5 years now is to share people's voices. The folks that join me are people that run trails and love mountains just like me. There's no obvious and overly produced intention here, other than that I'm following my gut, my interests, and most of all my heart. I've been doing this now for 280 episodes, and every time I meet someone new and get to share someone's story, I feel alive. You can find all past episodes at singletrack.fm. Alright, enough of an intro. Here's my chat with Frédéric. Frédéric, super excited to have you on the podcast Single Track. Thank you so much for taking your time. Introduce yourself a little bit, not just to the audience, but also to me, because we've just met.
Yes, so my name is Frédéric Lénart. So I've been working for UTMB Group as CEO for more than 3 years now. I've started just during the pandemic in March 2020. And so I'm leading UTMB Group. I lead UTMB Group from that time. And I was part of the creation of the UTMB World Series and the new strategy that we have now for UTMB Group.
Okay, fantastic. So before we dive into your role and your position, tell us a little bit about you personally. Are you a trail runner? Can you be part of UTMB and not run trails?
No, I was formerly the CEO of the 24 Hours of Le Mans and the Le Mans circuit. So I was involved in motorsport industry. I just jumped in the trail running industry in March 2020. So I was not at that time a trailer, but I had the experience of driving a iconic event, worldwide known event by the community, and trying to create an international platform around this iconic event. So I did it for UTMB, for the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and now I tried to do it for the UTMB Mont Blanc and for the UTMB World Series. So I was not a trailer,
Yeah,
To be
that's a
honest.
fascinating
Yeah.
transition.
I just became a trader after joining the UTMB.
Yes. Have you run any of the UTMB races?
Yes, sure. To be honest, on the short distance, I'm more at ease on the 20K category. So I ran in canyons
Okay.
in April this year. I ran Doi Tanon in Thailand and some other events in Europe.
Oh, fantastic. So you've get the experience. So you're not just overloaded with work and strategy sessions, but you actually get to experience an event like this, which in some respects, trail running is different to many of the other professional sports because the participation is more important than the spectating in some respects, right?
Right. Yeah, that's right. And it's our model is based on the runners and the experience that we can deliver to the runners. And of course, we have built a strong sponsorship platform that appeal some key actors of the sports industry, like Oka, of course, and some other endemic partners like Bev, Compressport, and others. So it's quite we our model is balanced between runners and sponsors.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I am a race director. I organize a small little races, short distances, and the work to get the sponsorship sometimes feels like a lot of work, but it does pay off for the runner as well, right? Because the organization can breathe a little bit easier and you can build some good partnerships around it. You just announced a partnership with Dacia, right?
Yes, yeah, and it's a way to Dacia is very important sponsorship agreement for us because it's a non-endemic partner, and we see that this sport, the trail running, is fast growing, and the trail running attracts some new actors out of the sports industry, and it's very important for us. It means that something is changing, and it's very important. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a good time to take advantage of that visibility that the sport is sort of generating, right?
And sponsors are a way for us to communicate on our project to different communities, and we have some touch points with the communities of our partners. It's different, and we can then reach more runners and more enthusiasts around this sport.
Well, and this is, I think, the important part. It brings back to this point that trail running is a participatory sport, right? It's like if you only go and see your favorite soccer team in the stadium, then perhaps the sponsorship, you hope that the big sponsorship tie-in helps that the ticket prices stay low or something, right? But as a runner, you sign up for races, you commit a lot of time and energy into wanting to run these races. So if there are additional sponsors to help the race organizations keep entry fees manageable and keep these events well-staffed, well-stocked, right? Then creates a good experience for everyone.
Yeah, that's right. The way we work, and it's the price of the bib covers the organization for the runner. So the aid stations, safety, the logistics to build and to organize the events in the mountains, and the sponsors basically cover the communication budget and the promotion of the events and the visibility, of course, for the sponsors. So when we produce UTMB Live, for instance, to cover the event, some of the events, then it's mainly financed by the sponsors and the host cities. And the runners pay for the organization of the races they run.
Oh yeah, that's a good way of breaking it down and sort of creating sort of an obvious sort of visibility in how this works. I read this book a few weeks ago. It's I find it a fantastic book to give a great amount of history and insight. I guess I should mention for the people on the podcast, the race that changed running. I had Doug Meyer on the show. Aside from the history, I think it also highlights an aspect that is super important, and that is that the pandemic created a very challenging environment, especially for you and as UTMB having be such a huge organization. And you really sort of had to take that moment and opportunity to sort of restructure and reset yourself. If you say you're the CEO of the UTMB group, is that, and refresh my memory if I get this wrong, that's the partnership that is with Ironman, the organization that is half owned by Ironman, right? Because UTMB, the race in Chamonix, is still solely owned by a different organization. How does this break down a little bit?
Yeah, basically, let's come back to spring or winter 2020. Then at that time, we noticed that, for the UTMB Mont Blanc 2020, for the edition 2020, we had 32,000 runners applying for the different races of the week in Chamonix, and we had only 10,000 slots. Mm-hmm. So we knew that at that time the model that we had to qualify to the Mont Blanc was overloaded. We couldn't continue like this, because otherwise it was kind of frustration for the runners who couldn't participate. So we thought, okay, we have to change the model and to build a new sports system. And then we thought that it would be difficult to organize the edition 2020, and that the pandemic will block the business for probably 1 year.
Yeah.
And then we said, okay, it's the right time to design the new sports system and to be ready for 2022. So we already had this anticipation of 2 years to build the project, and so and of course we resumed the races in 2021, but we needed 2 years to build the project. And then the project was based on a pyramid with the UTMB Mont Blanc at the top of the pyramid, and a set of, at that time we thought about 35 events that would qualify for the Mont Blanc. So you had to run the races of the UTMB World Series before being able to run the Mont Blanc. And so basically it's what we did with the UTMB World Series. And of course, it was based on the fact that we had to control the races, because we wanted to have a global sponsorship platform, and we wanted to have a unique UTMB experience for runners on those races. And then we had the experience of the Ultra Trail World Tour at that time, made of different independent events, and it was very difficult to manage. So we thought that we had to be to own most of the events of the UTMB World Series, and we started like this. And then we knew that we didn't have the financial resources, as it is explained in the Doug Meyer's book, that we didn't have the financial resources to manage and to build in a single year this new UTMB World Series. We also had some discussions with the Ironman Group, because they owned at that time some of the events of the Ultra Trail World Tour, and they were part of the discussions around the World Tour. And so we had some discussion, and we had the same project, and we said, okay, it would be good to do it together. And it was the starting point of the strategic approach that we had in 2020 with them to build the final proposal for the runners and for around this model. And then to do so, they became shareholder of UTMB Group, and the event. So we had started to build the the 2022 World Series by acquiring some events for UTMB Group. And the Ironman Group acquired some events in Oceania, in USA, in Europe as well. And then those events belonging to the Ironman Group are linked with the UTMB World Series and with UTMB Group through a license agreement. So we have a master license agreement with the Ironman Group to be able to apply this unique experience in trail running, and they all have the signature by UTMB. I don't know if it's clear, but it's,
I mean, it is, you know, it is difficult because I have some questions around. I think what I see outside of what UTMB has done, what I see is that in the US and in Europe, races are there's sort of two different formats the way races grow and become popular. In the US, it's often tied around a race director. It's often personality driven, right? And people come, they run, they volunteer. Yeah, it's a beautiful course, but it's sort of, there is a familiar face that you sort of follow and you attach yourself. Yes, I want to run this race because XYZ has built it up. I trust him, right? And in Europe, often it, at least it feels to me, I'm from Germany, but I lived over here now for a while. It feels like it's the region that wants an event, right? It feels a little bit like there is an ownership group of locals who say it would be a great idea to bring a tourist destination to a town and sort of build something up. And I'm trying to figure out how this new business model that you have sort of fits into this, because looking back at the US, if you buy races in the US, what happens to the race director? Does he disappear? And if so, are people still gonna come? That was probably one of my core questions.
Well, that's a good question. I think that's today in 2023 we have 36 events in the World Series. Something like 16 belong to the Ironman Group. About 12 to 13 belong to UTMB Group, and the rest is made of events in China, in Thailand, in Latin America, where we are not settled. So we said, okay, on these countries, rather than being an entrepreneur in this country, we prefer to have a franchise agreement with these with some event organizers locally. But otherwise, if we take the Ironman Group events and the UTMB Group events, I don't see any case where we got rid of the race director. Okay. I mean, they are all still in place, and they guarantee that we continue to build the event with them. So, for instance, for UTMB Group, when we have decided to settle in UK and to take over Ultra Trail Snowdonia, we said, okay, we will hire the race director, and it will be employee of UTMB Group. And we continue like this, the experience with them. So, and you're right, there is a difference, and it's the way we work in US as well. In USA, the Ironman Group leads the business in USA because they are Americans, so it's easier for them than for us. But it's exactly the same model. And where you're right is that in US, the events are a bit different because you have more restrictions on trails with the US Forest Service and so on. So the events are smaller, more intimate. I don't know if it's English.
Intimate, yeah.
Okay. And then it's a different culture, a different way and a different approach for trail running events. In Europe, we have less restrictions, so we are able to have big events, like in Val d'Aran, we have more than 5,000 runners during the event, or in Lavaredo, or in UTMB. But at the end of the day, we keep the local identity, and the local specificities, either in US or in Europe or in Asia, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Catherine Poletti mentioned that at Canyons in an interview, how important it is to keep that local flavor. And I've been asking myself this because I, as a runner, I don't mind that there are banners from Hoka everywhere. That doesn't bother me. I also don't mind the merch tent. I'll buy an extra t-shirt, right? Those are the things that don't bother me, even though I know I've heard from people who don't like that and they rather want to show up at some a dirty country road and just run with their friends, which is fine too, right? But that part doesn't matter. But what I've been sort of wondering and asking myself is what Catherine sees, what you see when you see keep the local flavor, and keeping the race director in place obviously ensures that continuity, which is a huge missing piece in my head in how to ensure that these events, because there's another aspect that I've been asking myself and hearing from people. It's like, how do you ensure volunteers to show up if you wouldn't have a local race director on the ground who can manage that, right?
Yes, sure. I can give another example. In Nice, for instance, in the south of France, we have created the event from scratch. Nice Côte d'Azur by UTMB didn't exist before UTMB World Series, so we created the event from zero, and then it's, let's say, the race director is based in Chamonix because she's part of our organization, but we rely on local people that are locally based in order to recruit the volunteers, have some contacts with the local authorities, get the authorization, and so on. So we always have a local team that who work not full-time, but part-time, in order to be able to keep the connection with the local territory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a super important part, because that's why, I mean, people come out to volunteer many hours of their day, right? And if you would host the Olympics, then it's a once in a lifetime event, right? Then you can find volunteers from all over. But these races happen every single year, right? The level of commitment from the volunteers and ensuring that they are tied into the organization, I think is a huge piece, right? So in Europe, you also bought the races. So Eiger and Lavaredo, with a big history, are now fully bought. That's fascinating.
Yes, yeah, because when we started to shape the World Series in 2021, we thought that we needed some big names like Eiger and Lavaredo. So they were in the discussions, and we took over the two events, and we thought that the World Series should be made of big names, existing event with a high potential, like in France, we have some of them, or anywhere, I would say, and we could create some new events with high potential as well, as we did in this Côte d'Azur by UTMB, for instance.
And I don't know how it's pronounced, Grand Est in the Alsace region. I love that. That race looks absolutely fantastic. I'm from the Black Forest region, so I grew up very close to that region. When I saw the pictures, I'm like, I got to run this race one time. It looks fantastic. That's also a brand new one.
Yeah, it was the first edition was in May this year, and from this first edition, it was already a big success. We know that this event has a high potential to develop. Even if for the first edition we had 4,000 runners, mainly local runners. I mean, runners coming from the region. So it was about 85% of the runners of the different races. So definitely we see that when we create an event somewhere, or where we have an event somewhere, we get some connection with the local community of runners.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So in the US, it seems a little bit like it's been a challenge in trying to find races and also to build new ones. You haven't built any new races, right? Was that the intention? Are you trying to build any new races, or was it always the hope in taking over existing ones?
Yeah, it's something. First, it's easier to integrate an existing event because you start from something already in place. So it's what we did so far. We could contemplate to create some event in some regions in the US. So it was part of the projects last year. So and this year, so far we didn't succeed, but yeah, definitely the US community is the biggest community of trail running in the world, with a lot of small events, I would say, and we absolutely need to have a strong platform in the US to be in touch with the US community. So it's part of our strategy to really develop the number of events in the US, either through acquisition or creation.
Yeah, especially because as much as the US has the largest number of trail runners, because the country is so big, it is hard to participate in events that are really far away, right? The regionality in some respects becomes even more important because people can't fly across the country, right? I think Grindstone was really important for you because you finally had an event on the East Coast, so people didn't always have to fly over to the West Coast, right? Yeah. Well, that is fantastic. I appreciate your openness and giving me all of this insight. I'm looking over my questions, and I don't really have any questions anymore. No, I appreciate that. But yeah, I appreciate you sort of letting me kind of look a little bit behind the door and see how you operate. I think it helps the trail running community in general. I think people are interested. People want to embrace UTMB, and I mean, in the US, we developed and marketed chain and franchise and sort of these corporate ideas. So we're not completely unaware of how this works, but I think we're also a little bit leery of it. We are worried that the personal flavor disappears. We're worried that it's starting to get too plastic, too corporate. And I think the more you as UTMB and Ironman Group can sort of put a face to your efforts, can put I mean, you're a business, right? You don't have to tell every business strategy decision. Nobody expects or demands that, right? But to sort of show that what you're doing is not just meant to profit, but also to really meant for the trail runner. And I think I'm going to connect back to a point that you said very early on, that when you looked into developing this platform, you had 30,000 runners apply for 10,000 spots. Many of the popular races in the US would not even consider that ratio to be an issue, right? I mean, the fact that you're saying this ratio is something that we need to find a way of helping people to not be frustrated, helping people to get to run their races, I think speaks to your deeper motivation behind what you're trying to do, which is create accessibility to these events.
I think it comes from the Polity family. You know, the founders of and Catherine and Michel, basically, they are really open to the world. And just, of course, we need to make profit because otherwise we won't have any means to develop our strategy and our view of what trail running by UTMB is. But on the other hand, we want to stay open and yeah, it's part of our values probably to be open to the world and not to frustrate any people, or really to welcome the runners to our community.
I can feel that reading the book and sort of going beyond of the chatter on social media. I mean, giving people the ability to run these events is still at the heart, and making it accessible and not exclusive. I mean, it would have been easy for you to say, look at the index points and only the top runners get to run UTMB Mont Blanc and everyone else, you get to run something else, right? The ability that I, as a slow runner, still have a chance of get to have this experience. And you see that people want to have this experience in this place. They are not just satisfied with running a distance somewhere in a neighborhood. They want to come to Chamonix, right? And to be able to harness that, I think, and shepherd that also, right? I think is an important role that you're playing, and I think we as trail runners benefit from it. Frédéric, thank you so much for your time. This was really incredible. I super appreciate you speaking to me. Yes, I will. I don't know. You don't have any social media accounts. Usually I ask my guests for social media accounts. I just link UTMB and that's good, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Perfect. Super.
Hope to see you in August in Chamonix.
Yes, absolutely. I'm planning on being there soon enough. I need to get my stones up. I ran Canyons. Oh yeah. What happens? Canyons is not announced as a North American major yet.
It was a major for 2023. We haven't confirmed what event will be the major for 2024. It should be announced during UTMB.
Okay, perfect. Super. Looking forward to that as well, because I like getting double stones. That was very nice. I'm getting.
Right, me too.
I'm training for Kodiak now. I'm running your new Kodiak race.
Cool. That's
perfect.
a great event.